Carolyn Doobie here. What's the play for today? Well, today I'm playing around with washi tape. I am actually going to use a bunch of it. And even as much as it feels like I was using, I really didn't use that much because the rolls look just as full as when I started. Now, what inspired this play? It was Mary Beth Shaw when seeing her use washi tape with my Figments of Imagination stencil from StencilGirl. Now, I started out with the Figments and I ended up with this silly picture frame, kind of like a little wild and crazy family picture frame here. Now, along the way in this video, you're going to see a bunch of different stenciling techniques, including how to do the tissue paper here, my sneak here because I cut this one out, but I so wasn't going to cut that one out. But anyway, all this stuff's for you in the video. Now, the frame actually was done in an earlier video, and thank goodness art does not have any kind of expiration date or time limit, because this was from over a year ago. I'll have the link down below for you so you can check out that video for how the frame started. So I'm starting off with a piece of white cardstock, and I'm going to completely cover it in washi tape. Now, it doesn't matter what color, what pattern, any of that stuff. What I want to do is just get this whole thing covered in washi tape. The whole rainbow is going to come out and play. Some of the tapes are wider, some of them are narrower. Doesn't matter. The goal here for me is to completely fill in this piece of paper. Now, since I am a washi tape hoarder at heart, the idea of using the tape, well, it kind of freaks part of me out a little bit, because what if I run out? Because, yeah, I'm going to have such a shortage of washi tape. But it really is amazing to me how little tape it really does take to fill an entire piece of paper like this. Now, there is one thing that I did watch out for as I was doing this. For the most part, I just stuck stuff down wherever. But if it was anything involving words, because some of the tapes have words on them, I just made sure all of them were going the same direction. That's important because I need to know which end is up and which end is down, because I'm not actually going to see what I'm doing with this when I start doing it. Well, let me show you what I mean. I'm going to flip it over and then I'm going to trace one of the Figments of Imagination here from the stencil that I created from over at StencilGirl Products. And then it's a matter of just cutting this guy out to see what kind of colorful washi tape collage is on the other side. Now, as I was cutting him out, I realized I have just the place that I want to use him. I have a picture frame that is not finished. It hasn't been finished for a long time, and this was just what I needed for it. Now, the picture frame that you're about to see is one that I added a little paint and some layers onto in a previous video, and I'll have that link down below for you so you can check that out. Well, I took out the back panel from that side, which was actually made out of cardboard, and I'm going to put it right on top of the washi paper, and I'm going to cut it out. That way it'll be just the right size to fit in there and become the new backing for that side of the frame. Now, I've got the one big figment on the right, but I want to have little figments in all those little sections on the other side, except there is no way I am going to use the same process for the little ones that I did for the big. Now, the little ones also come with those masks, so I've got the masks, I've got the stencil, just like what happens for the large size of the Figments of Imagination, but because I've got the masks, it allows me then to arrange them inside the different sections of the frame. I can see how they're going to look, number one, before I commit to anything, and then number two, I'm not actually going to cut anything out, because there is no way I have the patience to cut something that small. So what's holding these in place while I'm putting them in position? That would be tape. I'm just rolling around itself, you know, kind of the way you stuck stuff together when you were in kindergarten. That's what I'm doing here. It's going to hold all those masks in place, because now what I'm going to do is pull this out of the frame. So as I push that out, all of my masks stay in place, and now I can come over it with paint. I've got some black acrylic paint, and I am just going to stencil all over this thing. Now, the paint that I'm using is a heavy body paint, which means it's a thicker paint. And the thicker the paint, the less likely it is to run underneath something. And that's really handy if you're like me, where you use a very heavy hand when you're applying paint. So that's part of my trick for making sure that everything stays with a very crisp image. Now, as I'm doing this, I want a very solid layer of black. I want the washi tape completely covered except for where the masks are. So that means I might have to do a little bit of a second coating here. I'm kind of going back over any areas where the washi tape is still showing a little bit more than what I want it to. I'm better off to do a thin layer and then come back and put a second layer on top than doing a really thick first layer, which honestly, that's my first inclination of let's get this done in one pass. But the more paint you use, the more likely you are that something's going to run underneath. Now the figments didn't all perfectly fit inside those rectangles or shapes in the frame. Some of the figments were larger, so that means their legs are dangling in the bottom, perhaps down into another space. So how did I deal with that? Well, this is where I'm going to deal with it because there's one that's dangling into the square of the animal below it. So I've got everything where I want it, and then I'm actually going to lift up one of the masks. The one that's dangling down, that's the one I'm going to lift up. Because part of its legs I can cover up. So as I go and finish up the last animal here, do the ears on it, what happens is I'm covering up those feet that had been dangling in its way. So once this goes into the frame, it'll actually fit and work. So now's the exciting part when I've got all the paint on there and it's time to lift up the masks and see what the figments look like. Well, as soon as I popped this in, I started thinking about crazy family stuff because this totally hits me as a frame of, well, a very colorful and interesting family, which I have some experience with. So I needed a quote to go with this. That's what I want to put up there on the side with the orange. And to make it easy for myself, I'm going to stencil the quote on tissue paper. This is my wall of words stencil, also from over at StencilGirl, and I'm going to stencil the whole thing. I could just do the quote that I want to use, but I'm going to do the whole thing because as long as I'm here, why not? That way I'll have other stuff ready for whenever I want to use it. So why did I choose tissue paper instead of regular paper? Well, the reason for that is the tissue paper will end up being very translucent once I glue it on. And it won't be completely transparent and visible, but it will be a whole lot more invisible than plain old white paper. Because my countertops are usually pretty messy, things like these little masks can disappear. So to keep them from getting lost under things, I stick them onto a piece of washi tape. That way they're stuck to something and they don't just sort of disappear in the chaos on my counter. Well, I'm having such fun playing with the washi tape that I'm going to put some around the frame. And lucky for me, the width of a lot of the washi tape is just the right size to go around part of the frame, but not all of it is. Some of them are a little too wide, some of the patterns that I want to use, but the good news is this is washi tape and magically scissors can cut it. So what I'm going to do is just pull off the length that I need and then trim it down with a pair of scissors and then tape it on. Now, as I'm applying the washi tape, I'm pushing it down, I'm really burnishing it in as best I can with my hands, but this is washi tape. So what that means is sometimes the edges are going to come up. This tape is actually designed to be a temporary tape. It is not ever meant to be permanent, but I really want it to stay here, so I'm going to help it along a little bit. I'm going to grab some gel medium, just putting it on my fingertip, and I'm going to put that around the corners, edges, anywhere where it feels like the washi tape is kind of coming up a little easily. And now that I've got that in place, it's time to get the quote together and get that glued on. So I'm going to take a pair of scissors and just cut out the quote or the phrase or the words that I want from the tissue paper. And the ones I chose were, whatever verb tense I need to use, are my life didn't come with instructions. So why did I choose that one for this picture frame? Well, those figments that look just a little bit crazy in there has me thinking that some of the crazy things that have happened over the years in my family and in other families that I know, it's because we all didn't come with instruction manuals. We're figuring this out as we go, and it does lead to some crazy stuff at times. And speaking of figuring out things as you go, how I'm going to fit this on here, well, that's what I'm trying to figure out now. Because I've got this image in my head for how I want it to look, but the words don't fit exactly there. The word instructions, it's just too long for me, and I'm going to have to do something about that. Now, the fact that this is all on tissue paper makes it so easy to move stuff around, play with the placement until I get it just the way I want it. And that word instructions, it was too long. So I'm going to change its length just a little bit so it can fit with the way I want it to look. So what's the trick for getting the tissue paper to look translucent? The trick is glue, and plenty of it. I'm using fluid matte medium here, but you can use any kind of fluid or runny glue. I'm putting a generous amount down, and then I'm putting some on top of the tissue paper too. Now the reason why I'm using a spatula to do this is because it keeps the tissue paper from tearing as easily. When I do this using a paintbrush, things tend to rip a whole lot more for me. And then I'm going to pull off any of the excess glue, spread it around. If I want to, I can use that glue to attach the larger figment, or I can use gel medium. And because I used a cardstock here, it's a little bit heavier paper, that's why I'm going to use the gel medium and not the fluid matte medium. And while I'm waiting for everything to dry, I'm just going to add some doodles and drawings around the frame using a pen. My tissue paper is dry now, and you can see it's a little bit whiter than it was when it was completely wet. And I'm going to use that to my advantage here. I'm going to take a white Stabilo pencil and just kind of put a little white outline around it. Well, thanks so much for joining me for today's play. And as you can probably tell by this point in the video, I like to have fun and I don't like a whole lot of rules or stress. So if you'd like to see more things like that, hit the subscribe button. That way you'll know as soon as I have a new video out. And of course, take advantage of my free workshop called Permission to Play, which is all about giving yourself permission to play, as well as some mixed media techniques and tutorials in there too. Well, thanks so much for letting me be a part of your colorful journey.